Hey, friends, thanks so much for tuning into the show. I hope everyone is not only surviving, but thriving right now as we're going through this whole coronavirus quarantine. If you head back to my previous bonus episode, I talked a little bit more on some tips for still making your self care a priority during this time. Being able to pour into yourself so you can pour into others is going to be very important during this really unsure time. I also included a freebie on there with a new self care checklist that I created that I feel like everyone could benefit from right now to take the overwhelm out of self care and help you start pouring into yourself. Just a reminder, I also have self-care coaching available now, still at just an introductory $25 rate. This is a really good time to dial back in, thinking about your own self-care routine and going through my proven 3-tier coaching system to help you figure out what your self-care routine looks like for you. Make it simple and sustainable by going through some strategies together, such as what your daily habits are already and habit stacking on what you're already doing. I want to help you make this self-care routine into an ingrained habit you don't even need to think about. So head to the show notes to check it out, and let's get into today's episode.
Hey friend, welcome to the Self-Care Isn't Selfish podcast. I'm your host, Emily Nichols. As a Whole30 certified coach, wife, busy working boy mom, and your self-care guru, I'm here to help you start putting yourself first without the guilt. Each week you'll hear motivating and practical tips on how you can create a habit of self-care through interviews with my amazing guests or quick solo episodes with me. After each episode, you'll walk away with an action plan and feel empowered to implement what you have learned into your life. So grab a cup of coffee, glass of wine, or your favorite sparkling water, and let's do this.
You're listening to episode 34 of the Self-Care Isn't Selfish podcast. I'm so honored and excited to have my friend and fellow Whole30 certified coach, Kristi Hujik, on the show today. As you all know, I frequently like to bring on fellow Whole30 coaches because everyone has their own different perspective and story to share when it comes to their own health journey. And I knew I wanted to bring Kristi on in the month of March because it's MS Awareness Month, and Kristi is living with multiple sclerosis. If you're not sure what MS is, I'll make sure to include a link in the show notes to the National MS Society webpage so you can learn more. But I know a couple other people who have been diagnosed with MS, and I know it presents itself differently in other people, but pretty much it's a pretty unpredictable disease of the central nervous system, and it's in the US, it's the most widespread disabling neurological condition. And researchers really can't say with complete certainty what causes MS. There's about 1 million people in the United States living with it. And there's different treatments and new research coming out daily as far as how you can treat MS, but like I said, it presents itself differently in so many different people. And Kristi does a really great job. She really has a servant's heart of wanting to share her story and help people with other diseases, even other than MS, to be able to treat them and live a life where they're not just surviving, they're thriving. So let me tell you a little bit more about Kristi. She's a coach through and through. Like I said, she's a Whole30 certified coach. She's in Winter Garden, Florida. Oh, Florida sounds about nice right now. And she works at the Golf Channel. She's a coordinating producer of the news, and they call her coach there as well. She grew up coaching various sports, and now she also teaches a variety of group exercise classes. So she's a group X instructor like myself. But Whole30 was really part of her journey beginning in 2017 when she was diagnosed with MS. And we talk a little bit more in the episode about how you can support someone with MS and how through self-care and what she calls a few different areas of your life you can control, she's been able to manage it and be able to share her story and inspire others living with MS or other diseases to be able to take care of themselves and to think about what they can control versus the uncontrollable. So enjoy this episode. I hope you feel inspired and maybe share this with someone else that you know that's living with MS. Make sure to stick around to the end of the episode. As always, I'll be sharing my 3 biggest takeaways for you, and I can guarantee you there's a few big ones I really want you to hear. So sit back and relax and enjoy this conversation with Kristi Hujik. All right, gang, welcome back to the Self-Care Isn't Selfish podcast. I'm here with my friend, Kristi Hujik. Thank you so much for joining me today, Kristi.
Thank you for having me, Emily. It's great of you to have me.
Oh, I'm excited to have this conversation. I always like bringing on other Whole30 certified coaches because I feel like we each have our own niche to talk about and different perspectives. But before we get started, the first question I always ask my guests is, what does self-care mean to you? So, Kristi, what does self-care mean to you?
Self-care to me actually is when I feel like I need to stop what I'm doing and make sure I reach around and give myself a big hug. And I always say self-care works a lot better when you just need an oil change versus when you need a new transmission. So if you can keep up with it and do it regularly, it's a lot easier than if you wait until things get bad and then you need to try to fix them. So it's something that we have to keep up with, but it's challenging for everybody to try to get it in. And the other thing is that if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of other people. So those people that say, oh, well, I have kids, I can't do this, I can't do that. Well, you're going to be in better condition to take care of someone else if you take care of yourself first.
Absolutely. I love that analogy. Definitely doing some maintenance on yourself is going to help in the long run.
Yes, for sure.
Oh my goodness. Well, Kristi, tell everyone a little bit about yourself, like where you've been and where you are now. What's your story?
The shortest form I can do is, I grew up in Connecticut. I went to school in Pennsylvania in East Stroudsburg, but I've always been around sports. Sports has always been a part of my life. I'm an only child, so I always say that all my teammates were always my sisters that I didn't have. And then when I finished playing sports, in college, I was always around coaching. Coaching has always been a part of my life. I coached youth soccer. I've coached basketball. I've been a Beachbody instructor. I've been a personal trainer. Like you, I'm a Group X, instructor also. And now a Whole30 certified coach. But my day job is that I work at the Golf Channel. I'm a coordinating producer for the Golf Channel. So that keeps me occupied on top of this. But coaching is something I've always loved, and I think it's always been in my blood. So I'm glad that I've always found a way to kind of keep it in my life in some capacity.
Yeah, I feel like that with a lot of people that are in some type of coaching industry. You've always wanted to serve people or help people in some manner, and it's whether it's fitness or nutrition. There's a lot of different areas you could take it, but I feel like once you're it's kind of ingrained in you, and you take that with you in your life.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think for me, it's just, if I don't have that, I get, a little fidgety. And so in my older age, I want to do it more and more because, to me in my older age, it's about helping others and bringing them along. And even at the Golf Channel, it's about bringing on the younger PAs that, I've been in their shoes before when I started at ESPN. I was that young PA that needed a mentor and needed someone to kind of help bring me along. So, I feel like I'm doing it in all capacities of life and it's been important to me. And so I'm glad I can keep doing it.
That's wonderful. I love that. Well, share with everyone, since we are Whole30 coaches, I'd love to hear how you found Whole30.
Well, Whole30 for me, it came along after I got diagnosed with MS. And, I obviously being a trainer, enough about nutrition. I was never an unhealthy eater, except in college when we didn't know what we were doing. If only we knew then what we know now, we wouldn't have probably eaten like we did. But when you're playing basketball every day and you're eating junk food, it doesn't really show. You don't really know it. But for me, as a trainer, I had certain nutritional values that I would hang my hat on. But when I got diagnosed with MS, I was like, there's got to be something more specific that I can do that will help me deal with MS. And every time I would Google MS and nutrition, I kept coming to the Whole30, and I had heard about it, but I think, I'm kind of like a lot of people I deal with in now, where they've heard it, but they don't really know what it is.
Mm.
And then I started reading about what it is. And then I was that person that was like, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't drink my coffee black. So I'm exactly that person that Melissa was talking to in her book. And then I started reading the book, and she's like, yes, you can drink your coffee black. But I thought that would never be me, because I drank an upside down skinny iced caramel macchiato every single day from Starbucks. So I never drank my coffee black. And guess what? Now, even though I use nut pods and things like that, I drink my coffee black quite a bit. So here we are. But anyway, it's Whole30 did help me deal with everything. And it is the basis of, kind of the things that I focus on to stay where I'm at. And Whole30, for me, when I started doing it, I just got attached to it and the way you feel. So I did a Whole60 out of the gates. Like I suggest to a lot of clients who have a lot of inflammation in their body, which is what, I was dealing with. I suggest the Whole60 to a lot of clients to get rid of that, help get rid of that inflammation and really get a jump start so that you don't fall backwards quickly. And that's what I did before I reintroduced anything. And I mean, I guess if you had to put a percentage on things, I'm probably like, even in my food freedom, I'm like 90-10, and really that 10% comes from the occasional craft beer, because I actually like the taste of craft beer.
Yeah.
But when I have it, I don't have much, but in my food freedom, there's maybe a 10% wiggle, but I'm pretty much 90% feel comfortable just eating Whole30 style.
That's great. I love it when coaches talk about food freedom even more, because I think there's a misconception all the time, like, oh, you just eat Whole30 all the time. And it's like, no way. I enjoy margaritas and cookies, but I don't have like 3 margaritas. I just have one, and I don't eat the whole package of cookies. I just eat a couple now, because that's what's worth it to me.
Right, for sure. And suddenly, I mean, it's just amazing, and you can attest to this, how mindful you become of everything you do and every habit you ever had. And, I'll go to a tournament that I used to work at before when I wasn't on Whole30, and they would have little snacks there during the day, right? And I'm not a big candy eater, never was, but they'll have like little tiny cupcakes. And, before the day's over, mindlessly, you've walked by there 4 or 5 times, had these little tiny cupcakes that you think when you're having them, they're just little. And you're just doing it mindlessly. Like, you're not purposely going in there to do it. You're just walking by there and taking it. Now, every time I work at that tournament and I walk in that room, I'm like, I remember what I used to do, but I don't do that anymore, because now we know. So it is amazing how much it turns you on to what your body does, what your habits are. It's amazing. And when you can get that, as under control, food freedom is an incredible feeling. It really is. To never have guilt over food and know you're the one in control. It's a pretty awesome feeling when you get to it.
Absolutely. Well, can you share a little bit about your MS journey with us, like what that looks like for you? Because I have a couple of girlfriends who have MS, and I know it presents itself differently in everybody. And when this is airing, it's Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Month. So I'd love to educate people listening a little bit more on what MS is.
Right. And, like we were just talking about Whole30s, right? If you had 1,000 different people, 1,000 different people's Whole30s would be different. And it's the same for MS. 1,000 people would have 1,000 different ways and combinations that their symptoms projected. And for me, I'm one of the lucky ones, which has been actually a difficult thing to deal with, because I feel guilty a lot. I would have that guilt feeling of, why is this person so bad? And why am I not, and can I talk to people with MS? Because you felt like they're going to look at you and go, well, you're not feeling what we're feeling, or that kind of thing. But for me, when it took a while to get diagnosed. But how it was projected for me was because I definitely got a virus. So the virus brought it out. And so if I never got that virus, who knows if the MS would have ever appeared. It might not have. But obviously when you have the virus, it triggers the autoimmune response, and then your body starts rebelling against itself. And so it's causing damage when it's trying to protect itself, but instead it's damaging you. So I got a virus, and when I first got it, it projected like hives, believe it or not. So, and I had never had hives in my life or allergies. And I was on the road when it happened. I was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for the 2016 US Open. And so it's a tough spot to be when something's going wrong, and especially a week that's that busy for us, because you're feeling lousy and you got a lot of work to do. And you know, I'm, as the sports background tells me to play through, you know, I'm trying to play through it. So I would go back to my room after a day when I was having hives, and, you know, I'd taken some Benadryl because one of my friends was like, hey, look, you're having an allergic reaction to something. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have any allergies, so I have no idea what it could be. And I went back to my room that night, and it was projecting as pain through my body. I can't, it's hard to describe it, but it was going through my neck, my back, my hands, you know, my legs. And I mean, I felt like I was like, what's going on here? Like, am I okay? You know, I gave it one of those, like, this was a little shocking. And so, you know, I drove myself to the emergency room. They probably saved me in a way, because when you do have a bad MS flare up, you can get steroids sometimes that'll help temper, you know, the relapse. And they did give me some steroids, and that probably helped me in some ways. And they also gave me antihistamines because, again, they thought maybe it's some kind of a allergic reaction. So I didn't get any answers. And to make a long story short, I went through the summer just continuing to have symptoms off and on. And there were days I would feel okay, and there were days I thought I was okay. And then there were days I was like, holy cow, this is still going on. And like, all the blood work's coming back fine. And, you know, my regular doctor was like, well, I said to him, hey, this is a really weird thing, but a few people I know at the Golf Channel have MS. And I said, is there any way that it could be MS? I'll never forget this conversation. Is there any way this could be MS? And he's like, first thing out of his mouth was, nope, you don't project like you have MS. Right. And so I kind of got stuck in the niche of, everybody looks at me and thinks I'm healthy, fit, and all that. And no, that it couldn't possibly be MS. So it took going to an infectious disease doctor to find out the virus, found out I had a virus. Then we're like, okay, when the virus is out of my system, I'll be okay. Well, you know, a month later, I'm still having symptoms. And the infectious disease doctor was like, okay, you got to go to a neurologist. Go to a neurologist, you know, then they get a brain MRI. And then it gets complicated too, because I've got the lesions that showed up. But I will never forget going to pick up the brain and neck MRI from the MRI place. And I go to pick it up to get an extra copy to give it to my chiropractor, because I have a neck that's a little bit finicky. So I said, well, let him look at the neck and take a peek at it. And I open up the MRI and read the report and see in the report, I'm in the parking lot by myself at the MRI place, and read that my brain has lesions that are projecting like they're MS. And I'm like, what? You know, so I'm surprised too, you know, even though I had mentioned it, like, you know, it was surprising to me. And so anyway, I eventually needed a spinal tap to confirm the diagnosis, because I didn't have lesions anywhere else but in my brain. So on a day-to-day basis, the way it projects for me, or the way it did project even with the symptoms, is burning. I get burning skin. So I would feel it in my legs. I would feel it in my, sometimes it was in my chest, sometimes my arms. So my biggest symptom, even if I have a flare up, I'll feel it a little bit, was burning skin, believe it or not. And that's, you know, I'm lucky. My lesions are in places where, in the brain where, you know, it doesn't do much else. It's just kind of there. And I was like, how big is that part of my brain? I asked my doctor. I was like, wait a minute, how big is that part?
How close is it to my locomotive skills and all that other stuff?
Right. So they can tell a lot of times by looking at an MRI where your damage is, what your symptoms are likely going to be. So I'm lucky in that respect. So again, being lucky is meant being guilty, but it's also for me meant, what can I do to help somebody else? What can I do? Because I haven't had any, knock on wood, you know, per se relapses. I haven't had any new lesions, because I believe what I do every day keeps me that way. So I believe I could be worse if I didn't put the work and the effort into doing the other things that I do. So I just have that goal of just, talking ad nauseum about my story and hoping that somebody at home is like, can understand that, look, there are things you can do. Yes, it stinks. It's terrible. And I can understand how someone can get depressed really quickly, but there are things in your control that you can do, and the rest you can't worry about because it's just meant to be. But there are things you can do, and the medicine is getting so much better. And the stem cell research that they're doing, there might be a day, who knows if it'll be in my lifetime, but there might be a day when they can actually, repair the damage that's been done. And it's exciting, to see the advances that can help the people that are really, really struggling.
Hey gang, cutting in on this conversation real quick to tell you about my friends at the new Primal. I love this company not only because they make Whole30 approved sauces and meat sticks with just clean ingredients, but because of their mission of returning to the table. Food really does bring people together, and with all of our busy lives, it's hard to sit down to a meal together with your own family and your other loved ones. But the new Primal is really focused on community and bringing people together around food. And why not do that with clean ingredients? I use their classic marinade weekly. Their mustard barbecue is the perfect dipping sauce, and their ketchup as well. My kids love all their different spicy buffalo sauces as well. And like I said, their meat sticks are Whole30 approved, so I always have some in my handbag or in my glove compartment in my car if I need a quick emergency snack. So head over to thenewprimal.com and you can use the code EmilyNichols22 to receive 15% off your order. So remember, go to newprimal.com and let us know how you are returning to the table and connecting with others through food and the new Primal. My girlfriends that I know that have MS, they have a similar route in how they got diagnosed. I'm sure you hear this a lot too, where it presented itself in such different symptoms, and it took a very long time to narrow it down to being MS. And, you're kind of at the mercy of the doctors at that point. They're like, okay, well, you'll have to do this, 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 and this. But having some type of control, like with, okay, well, I'm still going to try to move my body if you're physically able to, or at least fuel my body to, hopefully maybe reduce the inflammation. That there's some power in that, and taking back control of something that can be uncontrollable in your own body.
Well, absolutely. I mean, as you know, most diseases, they're coming from inflammation. And my dad, my grandpa's dad, there's a history of inflammation in the family and inflammatory diseases. So I refer back to that, quote, and it starts with food a ton. Genetics loads the gun, but your environment pulls the trigger.
Yeah.
It sticks with me so much because yes, you might have the gene. You might. Okay. You might go do that genetic research and see you have the gene for cancer or what else. But you know what? If you can control your environment and you can do the things you need to, like me, to keep the inflammation out of your body. I mean, I have osteoarthritis in my left knee. I don't even feel it since I started doing Whole30. And I mean, I teach a high impact, group fitness class on, teaching Les Mills body combat. When you're an instructor, you have to jump. You have to do a lot of stuff. You might be able to take low impact in the class, but if you're teaching, you've got to be able to do it at a high level. And I'm able to, I don't even feel it in my knee. So I firmly believe in it. And I firmly believe that the first thing you have to start with is your diet and the nutrition. Yeah. It's got to start there.
That's so great, Kristi. So what other ways has self-care maybe helped with you in managing your MS? Obviously, the way you eat is part of your self-care, taking care of your body through fitness, because most people that are fitness instructors, you're very obviously passionate about taking care of your body and movement in that way. But what other ways do you kind of incorporate self-care into your daily practice?
Well, I mean, sleep is huge. And if you have MS, sleep is huge because fatigue could be an issue. And the first thing my doctor was telling me was like, look, you've got to get 8 hours of sleep as much as you can. You don't want to work overnight hours. You really just want to watch your hours at work. And I'm lucky I'm at a place like the Golf Channel that, allows me sometimes to work from home on days off and try to control the stress. But the sleep is huge. And so that doesn't mean I get 8 hours every night. Look, no, that's difficult, right? But I know that if I think the magic number for me seems 3 days. If I get less than 7 hours of sleep 3 days in a row, I have to stop what I'm doing and say, this is it. I have to rest. Nothing else matters. And sometimes you have to do that and you don't want to, but sleep is huge. And we as a society are not really, I don't think we focus on it enough, but I think the sleep is huge. And then, I think meditation for me has helped keep the stress down. So for me, a lot of my symptoms were occurring at night. And I was getting anxiety at night because I was afraid to go to sleep for a long time. And so that anxiety, sometimes it's like, hey, is this the MS symptoms or is this just like literally the anxiety? I mean, I've never had anxiety in my life, but I think I pretty much had it when I would try to go to sleep. And so meditation makes a huge difference for me, just shutting everything down and being able to meditate for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, right before I go to sleep is a great thing. And, we already talked about exercise, but, I'm always telling people like, oh, I don't want to stop moving. I'm afraid to stop moving because you never know what might happen if you stop moving. So any way, shape or form you can move. I just did a friend of mine who has something else and has a hard time moving. I just gave her a workout to do with soup cans at home, in her chair, like little things, anything you can do to move, to walk 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I had a client who couldn't walk 5 minutes on a treadmill because she had so much inflammation in her body, couldn't walk more than 5 minutes. She does the Whole30. She's now, I think she's on a Whole60. She's, she was 40 days in and she's now walking 15 to 20 minutes on the treadmill. So there's ways. So it's just, people need to understand there are things you can do. And these are ways. Like you do this podcast and it's wonderful because you want these people have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself. You have to find a way to make life easier on you so you can make it better for yourself and for others. That's the only way to do it.
Well, I don't think people give themselves enough grace or patient enough. When you are dealing with some type of disease or inflammation, or you just added on weight, sometimes moving your body on a treadmill or trying to run outside or anything, it hurts. And then you don't want to do it because you're like, oh, I can't do that because it hurts. But if you just give yourself time and find modifications and stick with it and have consistency over time, it doesn't hurt as bad or it doesn't hurt anymore. And you're able to take it to the next level. And that's when you start seeing changes, not only physically, but mentally as well.
Right. And do you hurt because you're not moving? Or you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the thing. It's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Maybe you weren't moving enough and now you're hurting. And so then you've got to try to flip the script. And between the eating and doing a little bit more every day, if it means doing 5 minutes one day and 6 minutes the next, then that's how you start. It's gotta start somewhere, but not moving is not good. I know never for me have my doctors, very rarely have they told me not to do anything. So obviously if you have an injury, you've got to scale something down, but not moving has never worked for me for healing an injury. I have to move somehow. And and it's gotta be that way. And so, it doesn't matter how little it is. And as there's no one size fits all workout or activity for everybody, because everybody's going to be different depending on, what their pain level is and what kind of limitations they have. But there's always a way. There's something you can do.
Sure. Now, if someone that has MS, how can a loved one support them?
It's hard too, because I have friends who have it, and one of them is like me, who doesn't have very many symptoms, but the other one is going in the other direction. And it's very difficult for me to watch him progress from primary to, from relapsing remitting to primary progressive, now to secondary progressive.
Mm.
And I can tell you that don't let them be alone a lot, because it can be depressing. So alone is not good. So if someone were to live alone, I would be concerned, because again, it is easy to get depressed, especially if you've got limitations. He's dizzy. He gets dizzy a lot. He could fall. He has to walk with a cane. It's so, you really have to understand that you might not outwardly always see everything that's going on, but internally they're dealing with something. And you have to understand that. So like with me, I don't really say very much when I'm having some issues, but know that it is still something I have to deal with. I'm not ignorant enough to think that like, look, this is over. Hey, this is a breeze. I've got this under control. I do have it under control, but you can look at me and not know there's anything going on, but
Right,
I still
exactly.
deal with having MS. So you have to understand, that whatever that person needs, and everybody's different, and whatever you can do to help them, just don't let them be alone. That would be my thing. Get them out in public, get them out to do things. Don't let them stay in their house and be a hermit.
Yeah.
That stuff's no good. Try to get them out to do activities, encourage them to find a way to exercise. And diet can be tough, as to talk to people about, but maybe encourage them. Hey, I did a Whole30 and I thought it was really great. Hey, I've seen these other success stories with MS. Maybe this could help you. It's worth a try. I mean, it's better than trying, some of the medicines that we take have risks, but there's no risk really in trying to shore up your diet and doing a Whole30. So I think that people can do more than they think, but just understand that even if the other person doesn't tell you, they are dealing with something.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing with MS. You can't look at somebody and be like, oh, they got MS, and they may be fighting a lot of emotions or feeling depressed about their limitations now. But, even just being there to listen,
Yeah,
is a
for
big
sure.
part of it too, is a big deal to supporting someone as well.
And positivity. I think it's a positivity. I'm fortunate enough. I kind of didn't mention the attitude part when you asked about, self-care, but I think that is part of my self-care. It's the attitude I have about everything that just, everybody else got way more upset about me having MS than I did, because I was like, look, but I also am married to a very positive person. So, I have a positive person built in next to me, but some people don't. But if there's a way you can help them be positive and just, like you said, listen, offer positive responses, like it does make a huge difference.
Yeah. Your attitude is everything and everything in life, I tell you what. So, well, Kristi, where can everyone find you and connect with you online to see what you're up to?
Well, I am on Instagram and Twitter, but the hashtag is @CoachK Whole30, which all my UConn friends think is funny since I don't like Duke very much. But so everyone gets a kick out of that. And then I also have a website, which is Whole30CoachKristi.com. So that's usually where you can find me and all my my activities. And there's a way to email me there. And of course, anyone can DM me anytime they have a question or anything else.
That's great. Thank you so much for this conversation. I'm so glad to highlight MS Awareness Month, and having your positivity and your so many good tips, I think will really, shed some light on it, but also maybe give people a little bit of hope that they can live a positive life even with MS.
And thank you for helping to get the message out and for doing this during MS Awareness Month. We appreciate it.
You betcha. Thank you so much, Kristi, for sharing your story. There's so many wonderful takeaways from you and your MS journey and just your overall positive attitude that I think a lot of us could apply towards our lives, regardless if you're living with MS or another disease or not. So let's get into those. Number one, my biggest takeaway was taking control of the uncontrollable. How timely is that with everything going on in our world right now with the coronavirus? Like Kristi mentioned, when she received her MS diagnosis, that felt like a situation that was completely uncontrollable. She couldn't do anything to change that. However, she decided to focus on the things she could control, starting with her food, starting with the Whole30, starting with moving her body, her meditation, sleep, those big factors that she mentioned as part of her self-care that really helps her thrive while living with MS. And I feel like you could apply this to many other areas of your life as well, considering everything that's going on. So taking control, take the control back. Okay. So like right now, the coronavirus is going on. We're all quarantined. What can control? You can control your attitude. You can control your mindset. You can flip those negative thoughts to positive thoughts. Now, you could also control what you're consuming media wise. Okay. Social media, the news, getting consumed by that is going to make you feel extra anxious or stressful. I know for me it does. So I'm controlling how much I'm getting exposed to that. I want to be informed, but I don't want to be completely overwhelmed by all the news going on. So you can, like I said, you can apply this towards many other areas of your life as well, but control the uncontrollable. Focus on what you can control. Number 2, her biggest tip for supporting someone with MS is just being there, just showing up, listening, and being there. When you receive a diagnosis like that, from what I've learned from my friends who have been diagnosed with MS, there's a lot of unknown, and it takes a while to diagnose MS because it shows up in so many different ways in people, and there's flare-ups that can happen. And sometimes, it may not be visible to someone that someone has MS. So being a little bit more sensitive, compassionate, and just being there, showing up for someone and just listening to them. They don't need your advice. They don't need you to, compare it to a situation you've personally been in. Just be there, show up, and listen. Don't let those people be alone. Like she mentioned, having a friend to just be there and listen is a really big support. Like I always say, and just through my self-care coaching, community is a big part of what we talk about. And community and connection is everything. It's something we crave. So just show up for somebody. Don't let them isolate themselves. And number 3, my biggest takeaway, attitude. What is it? Your attitude determines your altitude. That's so true. So I know it's hard to stay positive when you find yourself in an uncontrollable situation, but your attitude determines everything. So try to stay positive. Like I said earlier, flip the negative script around in your head to positive things only, and surround yourself with positive people. Like Kristi mentioned, she's very blessed that she has a very positive husband who is able to support her through her journey and still does. But if you're finding yourself around negative people, get away from those people. It's contagious, unfortunately. Negativity can be contagious. Or if it's someone you can't get away from, let them know, like, hey, your negativity is not helping me right now, and ask them to be more positive. Okay. So I hope you leave this episode inspired and, feel like maybe a little bit more about MS. I feel more informed now and better equipped to help my friends living with MS, or anyone for that matter going through some type of disease. If you loved today's episode, I would love it if you would leave a rating and review in iTunes. It helps the show get a little more exposure and easier to reach more and more people, which is the goal. And also give me a follow on Instagram at EmilyNichols22 or at Self-Care Isn't Selfish Podcast. And I've included in the show notes information on my self-care coaching and ways for you to connect with Kristi if you want to learn a little bit more about what she does. So thanks for tuning in. I love you all. Like I mentioned before, we're all in this together. Stay connected. Don't isolate yourself. Watch what you're consuming, not only just food-wise, because I know it can be really easy to snack a bunch when you're stuck at home with your kids, which I'm finding to be true, but also think about what you're consuming with your mind and your mindset and in your heart. So show up for people. We're all in this together. Make your self-care a priority because, as always, self-care isn't selfish. Bye. I'll see you next week.